I have a pleasure to invite Anssi. Anssi came to us from Finland, and as far as I know, Finland has better weather than Poland at the moment, so he chose us. Thank you very much, Anssi. Anssi has a little more than 40 years in life and a little bit less than 20 years in software development. His passion is friends, family, and football. Not hockey, which is usually typical for Finnish people. You can ask him why he chose football over hockey, okay? And he likes to talk about failures. Yeah, and he failed enough times to prepare a keynote on that. So, Anssi, the floor is yours. And I think Anssi will need to change a computer because, yeah, so allow him. And invite him with applause, please.
So, welcome to Testwares. And welcome to Earth, Wind, and Failure. Let me ask you, have you ever failed? No, somebody has. Have you ever, while testing, missed a bug that went to production? Somebody, yes. Have you ever, while testing, missed a bug that went to production and ended up being in the biggest newspapers in your country? I have. And that's what I'll be talking about today. Failure. So basically I will be sharing these different stories from my career, 4 altogether. But before that, I will introduce this little model that helps me think about failures and hopefully also can be useful for you. And we use that model to kind of find different things from these failure stories that I will be talking about. And hopefully we can learn something together, or hopefully at least the stories could be entertaining. So, hi, I'm Anssi. I'm from Finland indeed. It's a bit too warm here for sure. Yeah, I was prepared for something else now. I've been a testing specialist now for 20 years, and during that I've done a lot of different things, but testing has always been close to that, and there is no place where I would have worked where I would not have been testing stuff. My current title is product and team developer, and it just means that I try to help improving the quality of the products I work with and also the teams I work with. And also I call myself these days a failure specialist. It's a bit self-proclaimed title, but I've been intrigued about failure for whole my career, and in recent years I've been also talking about it, reading about it more, and so on, kind of getting more into. The voice went away, no, it's back. Yeah. And yes, I'm a football player. I coach in my daughter's football team and a lifelong fan of football as well. And first time in Poland, actually, I had to call my mom and make sure. My mother told me that yes, you have not been in Poland before, so nice to be here. Yes, so talking about failure. And I promised to introduce the model, so it's really simple. Basically just splitting failure into 3 different things. And first is all the factors and conditions that contributed to the likelihood of failure. So I call it the background. Some people might call it root cause, but I like background more because usually within a failure there's like 1,000 things that contribute to it, and background kind of contains all of those. Then there's the specific action or event that sets a failure into motion. And this I call the trigger, so it's the failure trigger. This could be a bug, it could be loss of balance, me falling down, it could be a rope snapping into 2. So something that sets the failure into motion, and then there will be effects and consequences resulting from the failure, which I call impact. So quite simple, like I said. But simple models are often useful. Every model is wrong, but some are useful, and these I've found pretty useful. All right, so I will now be going to the stories. I will not go in depth to any of these because I could talk about one story for hours, but I will try to pick some key things using this model from each. All right, so first story. I call it the one that got away, and it is indeed the story of the newspapers. So it was funny when I was preparing this talk. I thought that because this happened 15 years ago, too bad that I didn't take any screenshots because it would have been good material for the talk. But you know, internet does not forget. So I googled, and yes, they're still there. So it's a lot of Finnish. Basically what it says that there was a major data leak, 30,000 secret numbers gone public, and something about when it happened, and also that the company had to pay things and so on. So it was a big thing. And I'll just go a bit into what happened there. So the setup was that I was working at a customer, and they were doing most of their software by a vendor. And the process was that the customer would have these business specialists who would write a lot of specifications, send them to the vendor would implement, then I would be there as a test lead testing things. And the thing that was being done was pretty simple. They had a subscription, we call it P1, and they were going to get rid of this subscription and move it into two different things, or so all the customers would be migrated either into product 2 or product 3. And there would be some differences with this, like some things would change, some things would be added, some things would be dropped. And with P2 there was this thing that a specific field would be set to secret. So a simple thing, mostly configuration, not that much of coding involved, but something that wasn't in the specification was interpreted like this. That whereas for product 2 everything should be changed to secret, for product 3 don't touch anything, but they interpret it that make everything public. So this was the actual trigger there. So this is what happened, and let's look a little bit through the model, what was there. So first thinking about the trigger. So hopefully you're now thinking a little bit what the trigger was. Was it a bug in a code? And in this case, I'm saying that it wasn't actually, because the vendor had implemented it the way they wanted it to be done. Of course, definition of bug is tricky, but I would say that it worked like they wanted it to work. So it was more of a case of incorrect, unverified assumption. So it was a bit of an implicit requirement that they had thought. So this happened, and of course, it went unnoticed during testing. I even went back afterwards, like months. It took months to happen, and then I went back to look at the test data. Did I really miss this? And I did. It was pretty easy to miss, actually, or it was apparent. Then, on the background, so this is a bit of interpretation, but I'm thinking a big part of the issue was that the customer was doing very detailed specifications and sending them to vendor to be implemented. And if there were problems, usually more specifications were created. And then, based on those specifications, I created test cases, and there was also implementations done based on that. And what is a problem here is that this creates basically silos, and it tries to kind of do this thing that doesn't work, that you write everything and you would get everything into the paper just the way you think, and when somebody reads it, there's a lot of interpretation happening. We're trying to circumvent a basic thing, that is that we should have shared understanding of what we try to achieve. And we definitely did not have that. The vendor didn't really kind of understand the business. They weren't asked to. They were just asked to implement based on specs. And I think this is a thing that is really important to have, because if you have a good shared understanding between the people who are working, you don't actually need those detailed specifications. You need to have problems, you need to have goals, and then you can work it out. And this was a big thing there. So impact, it was big, it was huge. The brand hit was big, the customer hit was big. Also, like when it came to light, I heard of cases where when people's numbers had gone public, they actually had to move to a different city because there was a reason why the number was secret. So it felt bad. And there was a lot of humility gain. And what this means is that at that time I have been a tester for 5 years, and I thought that I'm the hotshot tester who comes in, saves the projects. And this really hit home that maybe that's not true. Maybe I'm normal, or maybe I'm even worse than normal. So it was a lot of humility gained, but also when I'm kind of starting to feel that I'm the hotshot tester again, I can always remember back and say that, yeah, maybe. But another impact is that there's a learning that time heals wounds. So 15 years later, I'm here talking about it, and it doesn't feel that bad. So you can even do a conference talk on your failures. So that's a learning for sure. So some aspects from the first story, going directly to the next one. And I tried to pick a bit different. They are not all like big, maybe, but I tried to pick a bit different ones so that I can go into a bit different aspects in different ones. And this one is called Fun with Data. And the setup is that I was working in a company where we were creating a web service. It was for authenticated users, a lot of users in many countries. And it was under a phishing attack, meaning that a black hat hacker, or whatever you want to call it, was trying to get out usernames and passwords. And we had customers in several countries, and one of the countries were targeted, so they had gained access to these user emails. And we did not have any MFA, so no multi-factor authentication. So it was just the user, email, password, and you're in. And this was good ground for a phishing attack then. And what we then wanted to do quickly was to create some sort of MFA. And because our user names were email addresses, we thought that the fastest one is to do something based on that. And that's what we then did. So we basically created this, that after you log in, you will have another screen which says that to like verify that you're the actual owner, we have sent you a code to your email, enter it here, and then you can proceed. So we thought that this is a pretty basic thing. And this is the way it works, and then that there's this verification code that you can be sure that it's sent by us and not the phisher, basically. And then we would send the email, it would have the code. It would be good. We did it quickly, tested it, went to production, and then our customer care started getting contacts of people not being able to log in. So it was weird. What's the problem? Why cannot they log in? I tried production, it's working. I'm able to log in. We went to the logs, of course, at that point, and the logs didn't tell us anything. So the logs were kind of bad. But fortunately, we were able to add more logging, push it. 15 minutes later, we're seeing what's happening there. And what was happening, there were kind of two funny things. First one was that the UX of our new window after login wasn't probably really good, because people were entering the verification code here and trying to proceed and not getting anywhere and calling our customer service. So like, that was not the intention, but we looked at it and it wasn't like that clear. And people are not maybe always that clever, or what should I say? Well, they didn't get it. It wasn't their fault, it was our fault. The other one was that the confirmation code, we thought that the more complex, the more better. So it had small case, uppercase, letters, numbers, and so on. And when I was testing, I always just copy-pasted. And it worked, but people don't copy-paste. They enter them character by character, and then I's and L's and zeros and O's and so on. They don't match. And they were not able to log in. We quickly understood this. We made a better UX. We changed the code to be numeric only. We changed the wordings. And after that, no more contacts, and it started working. So, thinking about that failure a little bit. Of course, in the background, there was the weak login process and the phishing attack. I'm now concentrating more on what we did after that. And I think there we were in a lot of hurry, but also there was lack of knowledge. And this is kind of easy thing to go into, that if you're working on something that you think you know, because everybody of us is logging in all the time. So you're kind of familiar, you think you know how it works, but we didn't. And then the other thing is that when it's not the core of your business, so it's just a way for us to be in business, you put usually the minimum effort. You want to focus on the stuff that brings you money. So another learning is that if you can like buy it from somebody for whom it is core, that's usually a really good idea. Yeah, so the trigger here was poor implementation. I'm saying poor testing, poor implementation. But the impacts, so you're not thinking like, is this even a failure? It wasn't that bad. Some customer confusion, some unable to use the service, and it didn't take long. It was just a matter of hours, max day, and it was fixed. And this is a key thing, because there was a good thing in the background, which is that we were able to react and fix quickly. And there's this cost of defect thing that you probably have seen and heard, that like in which phase, the earlier phase you find a defect, the cheaper it is, and the more it costs if you find it in a later phase. And this is not really true. Like continuous delivery, continuous deployment, they have shown that actually, if you're able to release really quickly and regularly, that's often the cheapest option. And I'm talking about the price. And people are really into it, and it's a great thing, because you push something, you monitor well, you notice the problem, you fix it. And for me, it was like a game changer, because I was working before in a place where we made one huge release a year. And they're going to this, that we can fix our problems in like 5 minutes. A lot of the skills I had acquired were not even useful in that context immediately anymore. There was no more time after the implementation is ready until we go to production. And it's a really good thing. This helps a lot if you can do this. But I still want to say that even though it's great, sometimes the big problems are easy. The ones that when your metrics go red, when the customer care calls, nobody is able to log in, it's easy to spot. And then of course it's fast to fix. But like the first story, it took months. And those kind of problems are often a lot harder. And that's why I think that what the continuous delivery, continuous release, everybody be developing thing sometimes misses is that you still should have some time for people to thoughtfully explore the product. And I think people sometimes miss this. And when I mean explore the product, it doesn't mean that you have to like demand that you need more time before it goes to production, but you can explore it in production using logs, analytics, metrics, database. You can explore it during the implementation, before the implementation, during the design, and all that stuff. But you need to do it, so don't just start automating stuff because you don't have time to test. There's a lot of other important stuff to do. And I see this in many places, and there is a downside, for sure. All right, third story, almost last story. Call it Hands in Prod. So this was a company I was working at that was a scale-up. So basically it used to be a startup, but then we started getting customers and money. And we were growing quickly. But a lot of the processes from the startup days were still there. And one of them was that we were doing a lot of direct database updates. It was like that bad that our customer care agents had write access to our database. So we were doing a lot of that. And because we have problems, we need to fix them directly, and we didn't have other means. And then my colleague was doing one of these updates once. Basic thing, update a table, fix 2 values, and you maybe see here that the highlighted part doesn't have the where clause. So a classical thing. So then they executed this, and every value in that database table was gone, so that basically that database table was corrupt at that point. And we didn't have any tools to get back from this, so we had to call our database vendor. We had a different vendor who was handling our database and asked that can they pull it back from the backups. And so we made the request. I continued working. A couple of hours later, I'm doing something in the database, and I see this. So connection failed. We were having a lot of trouble with our Wi-Fi at that time. So I'll open a browser window, see if the internet is working. It's working. Then I think, wait a minute. Is our production up? It's not up. So what had happened was that our database vendor, when they were trying to get the backup and restore that table, they dropped our database. After that, they dropped the backups to our database. Fortunately, they had one physical copy still, so they started then like doing the restoring operation and restoring from the bin logs, but it took 3 days. And we couldn't do anything, basically. We were just waiting and talking to customers, and hundreds of thousands of companies were not able to send or receive electronic invoices and other important documents. So it was a big deal. Okay. Thinking about the model, what was the trigger? So for sure it was the update that my colleague did, followed by an update done by someone else, followed by an update done by someone else. And this is a classic thing with bigger problems usually, that it's a chain reaction type of thing. So there's a background that enables a trigger to happen, which has impacts, which become background for the next thing, which enables a trigger to happen, and we got impacts, background, and so on. And one of my favorite TV shows is this air crash investigation, which is totally excellent except when you're about to fly. That doesn't feel so good. But otherwise, it's so cool because the accidents are horrible, but the investigation is always so thorough that they go from the end all the way to the beginning and find all these like chains from there. So this was again something that happened here. And then the background for this was for sure the way we were doing these updates. It was not safe, so it was accident waiting to happen. So there was a serious lack of risk prevention, which is really important to prevent risks. And I was the one who was responsible for ways of working in that scale up. They got me there to basically improve things, and that what didn't feel too good. Sorry. Yeah, so risk prevention is really, really important, but I think we were lacking seriously on another thing, that is practicing reaction to risk. So this is often even more important because, however good you are with preventing risks, stuff still happens. And if you practice for those things, if you do disaster recovery practice, if you do security incident practice, privacy incident practice, then when something happens, even if it's not exactly that thing, you're fast to know for whom to communicate, where to communicate, who can we ask for help, and all that stuff. But if you haven't practiced at all, then you're in a really bad place, and then you're gonna have to invent all of that when the situation is happening. So there were 2 big major things here. The impact was indeed huge. We lost customers and so on. But there was a lot of learning and improvement that we got from this. So of course we stopped the cowboy days of database updates. So still we had people, a lot less people who would do those. We would have better tooling. We would have better processes for doing those. We ditched the vendor. we took the database into our own hands. We're into the AWS, but still started like operating it ourselves, and we're in a lot better place in many ways. But addressing one key impact was still missing. And that came apparent to me a couple of years after this incident. It was feelings. So I was talking to the colleague who did that first update that I mentioned, like years after this had happened. And while we were talking, it became apparent that that person was blaming themselves for those 3 days of outage, and that it had a big impact on them to the level that their self-confidence was like severely damaged. And I was saying that, but hey, nobody blamed you. And we got so much better, and it could have happened to anybody. And we had this discussion, and then the colleague said that I wish we would have this discussion 2 years earlier. And totally we should have had that discussion. And these days I do a lot of, well, blameless postmortems. So this is a process where whenever there's an incident with customer impact, after it is resolved, we will get the people who were involved, and we will go through the incident. What actually happened, what was in the background, what were the impacts, how can we improve. Even though it's called blameless postmortems, there's usually blame in them. But the blame most often comes from the people who were involved with the trigger. They're blaming themselves. And when we get into this postmortem, they understand that there are so many things in the background that like after this event there's a lot less, and it's one of the best practices I've come into recently. So that's awesome. So time for the last story. It is called Decisions, and this was also a bit longer time ago. More than 10 years ago, I was working as a consultant in a company who were doing a big project, renewing their customers' self-care system, basically. And because it was like at the end of the project, there wasn't too much to test in a way, and there were still jobs to be done, so I took some extra responsibilities, out of which one was that I will take care of the translations, which was a really big, like long process here. So that I would take the translation files from the vendor, get them to the translation agency, get them back, then back to the vendor, and then verify those are okay, and then we're good to go to production. So this was a long project, it was already late. And what then happened was that when we eventually got the final product, it was missing 1/3 of all translations. And I was asking the vendor that where are the rest of the translations, and they said that we implemented everything that you sent us. So then I looked at, I had sent them everything, and I got from the translators, and I had sent the translators everything, but they had missed 1/3. So now I was freaking out, like what's happening? Should I tell that the translator screwed up? But I thought that I took the responsibility for this, so maybe I'll just go with that. So, and this was gonna take like 3 or 4 more weeks now, because the process was so agonizingly slow. So I thought that I will just go to the program manager's office and face the wrath. That's what I did. I went in, I knocked, enter, what do you want? And I didn't really know what to say, and I just went in and I said that I screwed up. Then we had a little chat of like he asked me what happened. I told him. Then he asked, have you done everything needed so that we can eventually get those? I said yes. And they said, okay, you can go. And I left the office, and I was thinking that because I was a consultant there, haven't been too long, that probably I'm not going to be there a consultant much longer, but I was feeling pretty good. I was feeling like I did the right thing. And a couple of days later, there was this go, no-go meeting, and this thing came up, And another manager got kind of upset about this, and then the program manager said that no need to go any further. We have discussed this with Anssi, and it's done. Next item. And I thought that this was good. This went well, and I was allowed to continue there. And like 6 months later, a person from my consultancy company calls me and says that she was there selling more stuff to the company, basically talking with this program manager who was now in a bigger role there. And she was saying that we got these kind of services and these kind of products and these kind of people, and the program manager said that you can stop there, that what we actually need is people like Anssi. So if you have that kind of people, we're hiring. It was funny because the only interaction I had with this manager was the case when I went in there and I said I screwed up. So that was an interesting thing. Last time going through the model, so on the background, yeah, big waterfall projects, stuff takes long, learn to avoid them. So it's not always possible, and it's maybe not always even the best idea, but let's say that I'm more comfortable with working with products and not waterfall projects. The impact here was project delay, money, and face loss. There were promises made, promises broken, but also increased trust through transparency. And this is a thing I have learned several times after this as well, that if you occasionally fail and you handle it really well, your trust goes up. If you would have a service and you never fail, it's always up, it's always working, people don't trust you as much as if you every now and then fail, communicate really well, tell what went wrong and how we've improved. So that's an interesting thing. And certainly, yes, impact was to learn to own your mistakes. So it could have gone the other way around, I could have been fired and so on, but I think still I would have thought that I did the right thing, and instead of starting to blame people, like take the responsibility, take the heat and look forward. And that is certainly something I learned then and have tried to continue ever since. Okay, and now the final words, even though this was going a bit crazy. So, I've been talking about failure, and it's not nice. Like, I'm not trying to say here that it doesn't feel bad when I fail. I just failed the day before yesterday, and it didn't feel good. But the thing is that everybody fails, every team fails, every company fails, and if you kind of, instead of being afraid of that stuff, you try to learn from it and try to make it an ally and so on, you can actually like get an advantage from that. And therefore, because there aren't enough failure specialists in the world, I invite all of you to become one. So I have a manifesto. So I can give this to you, but basically it goes so that I, enter your name here, am a failure specialist. With that, I fail. And I'm open of my failures, because when you talk about your failures, it's easier for other people to talk about those failures. And this increases trust, and trust is really important. I avoid blaming myself or other people on failure, and instead take responsibility and I try to look forward. It's not easy. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. When I lose my keys at my house, first thought is, who took them? Like, it just happens. But I try to move forward. The second is that, why do I always lose my keys? Yeah, try to go forward and understand that, hey, these things happen, it happened, what can I do to get better? Effectively use different means to minimize the impact of failures. I think this is the key thing for QAs, testers. Because when you find a bug, it's not like you prevented a failure. The failure already happened. You just noticed it early and you were able to make the impacts really, really small. And this is important, and there are other ways how you can minimize the impact. So improve the monitoring, improve whatever it takes, but this is the key thing. If there are problems but the impacts are small, They are not really big failures. And lastly, I study and seek to understand failures of all kind and use this learning to improve the system. And with this, we can take the failures and use them to be better. And that is the talk. Thank you, Slides Carnival, for the template, Testwares for inviting me here. You can find me from LinkedIn, and I'm going to be here for 2 days. So if you want to talk about failure, or football, or ice hockey, if you want, that's fine. Please come and talk with me. I promise to share another failure story if you will share yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for sharing your stories, your failures. And I think we have time for one question. So, yeah, Wojtek.
Hi, I'm just curious, who is Lehtelä, author of the domino picture? Is this someone from your family?
That's my daughter, yes.
Send love to your daughter.
I will,
Great picture.
I will. Yes, thank you. That was a good question. I like it. I was totally sure that nobody will know this, but immediately, well, hey, you're testers, so you will know these things. That's good.
Yes, as Anssi said, he's a very big fan of his own family, and it shows. So thank you again very much. If you have additional questions, you can ask him in foyer.
Yes.
So
thanks.
Again, thank you. And applaud once again, because I think he deserves it.